Hey everyone, welcome to the first installment of Rivers Art Draws. My name is Nick Rivers, and in this episode I will be drawing Mr. Incredible from The Incredibles. This video ran a little long, so I'll be uploading it into two parts. This part I will be covering sketching in inks in Manga Studio and applying the flats in Photoshop. Right here I'm in Manga Studio EX4. I'm sketching with the pencil tool on a color layer set to cyan to get that effect that you get with a non-photo blue pencil. Usually Manga Studio has your layers set up like this by default, but if it doesn't, you can set up any layer to color by clicking on the small gray square next to the layer and clicking Layer Properties. I've only been using Manga Studio for a little over a year, but I gotta say it's a wonderful tool if you're thinking about going completely digital with your workflow. For my stylus, I'm using a small Wacom Intuos 3 drawing pad. If you do some searching around on places like eBay, you can typically find one of these older models for a reasonable price. One of the problems with having one of these older Wacom tablets is you'll have to get used to looking up at your screen while you're drawing, which can be quite odd and uncomfortable at first, but with enough practice you can get the hang of it. You'll notice my sketch lines are really rough at this point, and that's because I'm just trying to get a general idea of what I want the character to look like. For Mr. Incredible, I've kind of modified, I don't know, my style of drawing a little bit. I'm not a big fan of using the word style. I think a lot of artists tend to get a little too focused on style rather than, just doing your piece and just doing it the way that you like it to be. Sometimes we put style first and form last, which I really try not to do. But for this piece, I wanted him to kind of retain some of that Pixar kind of big balloony quality that he has. So I kind of exaggerated certain things a little bit more than I might normally do. Like if I was drawing Superman or kind of a standard hero. I gave him the finger pointing upwards, like maybe he's got some bright idea, and kind of given him a big, kind of big chin and a little smirk on his face there. And a big barrel chest and a little bit of a belly on him. I remember seeing The Incredibles in the theater when it came out and being completely floored with how well the animators, writer, director, and voice actors did at giving us an entertaining homage to the whole superhero genre. I mean, it had satire, action, capes, and tights. What's not to like? I'm pretty sure it was like one of my top films from 2004. Right here I'm just tidying up a few areas before I get around to quote-unquote penciling the drawing. I don't really do a whole lot of penciling in Manga Studio, to be honest. It's more or less just kind of cleaning up those rough lines, making them a little less rough, adding some extra detail into the figure. As you can see, I'm starting to do right now. I'm kind of getting a little bit more of a shape into his domino mask and his nose and all that. If you've noticed, I've taken my blue line layer and faded that out just a little bit, and now I'm working on a grayscale layer that's right on top of the color layer, so I can see my pencils. And Manga Studio does a pretty good job of having your pencils look like pencils for the most part. I'm not 100% happy with the erase tool in Manga Studio. It's a little artificial looking to me. Maybe that's something with the settings that can be fixed. Again, I'm still kind of figuring my way out around Manga Studio, so I haven't figured that out yet. But if any of you guys know out there if there's anything I can do to kind of have a little bit more of a smoother eraser tool, let me know. I would be always up to learning new things myself. Um, Here we are, just kind of doing more, getting him figured out a little bit more, defining his musculature a little bit more than what I had in the rough sketch, and using my bottom blue line art sketch as a guide to go off of. And it really helps having that layer there, because I see mistakes that I wouldn't if I just went straight to inking it. So you know it's not always a necessary step to do a rough pencils over your rough lines in Manga Studio, but it does help. Say if I were doing this traditionally, I would be using a light box instead of having it all conveniently wrapped up in this nice little program here. Kind of keeping in line with the look that I'm going for with this, I'm not going to do a tremendous amount of cross-hatching on this picture. I want to kind of retain some of that clean cut look, and I'm going to later on, you'll see I'm going to have my colors do a lot of the work for me as far as giving me the kind of volume that I'm looking for with this drawing. But for now, we'll keep it nice and simple. Maybe I'll get off into doing some more complex characters and more difficult costumes to draw later on down the line in this series. I'm hoping to make this a regular thing. I don't know, expect to upload possibly every other weekend from me, where I just sit here with you guys and work on a piece. So if there's any characters you'd like to see me tackle, just let me know in the comments down below. They can be from pretty much anything. Comic books, animation, video games, you name it. I will warn you, I'm not the best at likenesses, so if you want me to draw some actor, I'll do the best I can. I can't promise you anything that's going to look remotely like them. But what I can promise that I will tackle the drawing and do it the way that I know how. Right now we're getting into inking, and I've created another layer, and I took my grayscale pencil layer and converted that to a color layer and set that to cyan, so it's basically become another non-photo blue layer. I just have a way easier time focusing my eyes on using the non-photo blue rather than inking over the black pencils. It gets a little rough to see what you're doing. I believe I'm using the Maru brush. I'm pretty sure I am. That I don't switch brushes that often, like rarely. I'm pretty fine with just using this Maru brush, and if I need to make my brush bigger, using the plus or minus number keys to do that where I see fit. Typically, while I'm inking, I use, like I said, I use a Maru brush. I will use the marker tool to do some of the lines inside, some of the fine lines inside. Again, you can always control the width of your, the thickness of your brush using the plus and minus tools. I also have my pen pressure sensitivity on too, so that definitely matters when you're doing those thin to thick lines. I also use my rotate tool quite a bit too to get a better vantage point for my hand while I'm drawing. I'm doing this on a small older MacBook, so it becomes necessary to rotate your piece to just like in real life. If you're drawing on a piece of paper, you tend to rotate that quite a bit to get better vantage point. Knowing your quick keys helps with that too. For Mac users, it's R to rotate. If you're switching over to your pins, you're going to hit the P. And if you hit it a couple times, you'll get a couple different options. If you hit it the first time, you get your regular pen tool. If you hit it the second time, you get your pencil tool. and then you hit it the third time, you get marker tool. Also, let me see what else I can remember. E for eraser. If you're switching over, like if you're doing some inking and you want to ink in reverse, or ink in white, or ink in the transparent. Typically, it's 4 for your black ink. 5 will change the color that's in your pen to white, and 6 will make your pen transparent. So basically, it'll erase what I use that quite a bit. It's a nice little function. Comes in handy quite a few times here, which you'll see here pretty soon. Once I get to that part. But yeah, that's pretty much inking in a nutshell. Also, the fill tool, like it's a lifesaver. You can outline something, and then use your paint bucket, your fill, to fill that area in with black. It speeds up the process quite a bit. So yeah, to get that fill to work, you outline something. You have to make sure your lines aren't broken, otherwise it'll fill the whole page with black. Which, I mean, if you Control Z out of that, you can step back and get back to where you need to go. But yeah, you'll outline the whole area that you need, select it, and hit G, and it'll fill that area up with black. So yeah, I gotta say, drawing this guy really makes me want to do a Incredibles Fantastic Four crossover group shot. I don't know, maybe that'll be one to look out for. You have to let me know what you guys think. Maybe should I do that? Should I not? I don't know. Before I forget, I gotta give a shout out to my buddy Brett Strong. He is the guy who turned me on to the whole Manga Studio thing. Before that, I was inking in Photoshop, which I mean, they've made some improvements with the newer editions, but I don't know. I don't think I would recommend inking in Photoshop. It's just not as crisp and clear as the as Manga Studio is. So yeah, I mean, Manga Studio is built specifically for handling this kind of work, and it's really helped my process get a little quicker too, because I mean, it's a little easier to maneuver around. I still love Photoshop. I've messed around a little bit with the later editions of Manga Studio. I'm kind of sticking with EX4 right now, just because it's what I'm used to and what I started on. But I think for me, this is what works. It might not work for you, which is fine, but this is what works for me. I like to keep my colors in Photoshop and keep my black and white work in Manga Studio. I have been messing around a little bit with coloring in Manga Studio, but I just haven't quite got the desired effects that I'm looking for. And again, that's probably just me not knowing enough about the program, but that's why I use it almost every day. Try to learn something new with it. It's just like if you're when you're learning to draw, the more you do it, the better you get at it, the more you learn. And hopefully this video, if you're an artist, hopefully you learn something from this. If not, maybe at the very least it's a little bit entertaining for you. You can see me messing up and filling the whole page with black ink. Again, that's the nice thing about having that Control Z. You step back and try it over again. And finishing up the gloves here. honestly, I'm just kind of okay with the way these hands turned out. Probably not my best hands I've ever drawn, but yeah, they work for now. I think looking at it again, I'm not 100% thrilled with the way that hand is coming off the page there, but I think you guys can get it for the most part. Understand what I was trying to achieve there. And here I'm gonna go ahead and get his Incredible logo in there, which is a really cool logo. Taking a look at it again, it's pretty. Whoever thought of this is pretty much a genius. But using my marker tool again, and it's a lot like, if I was doing it traditionally again, I would be using for the outlines that you saw me fill in. I would be doing those with a like a brush pit pen, and with the like the logo and some of the interior lines, I'd be doing that with microns. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm showing you how to put in some kind of speed lines or starburst, whatever you want to call it. Um, there is a tool in Manga Studio that just does this for you. I'm not doing it this way for the purpose of this demo, just to kind of also again show you, like, there's there's other ways to do it where you can have a little bit more control, um, while having like the starburst or the speed line function built in to the program's nice. I like to have a little bit more control of where, what lines go where, and this is a little bit quicker for me than having to fiddle around with that. So there we go. We've got him inked for the most part. Just gonna fix a few things here. Um, And again, those speed lines are just the line tool with the stroke out option on. I'm going to go ahead and export this as a 300 DPI file. Um, I think I saved it as a grayscale file. And then I'm going to go ahead and open it up in Photoshop. And what you have here is the piece that we saw in Manga Studio. I'm going to take my line work and put it all in one folder, separate it from that white background, so I can start putting some flats down. Oh, and also gonna make that a CMYK file. Why CMYK? Why not RGB? Well, if I ever decide I want to, make a print of this for myself, it looks a lot better in CMYK. And it's way easier to take something that's been done in cyan, magenta, yellow, and black and convert it to a RGB image, which is typically for web, rather than the other way around. So using my magic lasso tool, hitting the L button to get my magic lasso tool and lassoing off certain areas. You can also do it this way, where you kind of outline an area with your brush tool, which I'm doing with his hair right now, and then hit your wand tool, select the inside of that area, and if you have it set up like me, I've got my tool set up so I can hit Command F6 to modify, select, and expand. There is a little trick to doing that, which I will hopefully get into a little bit later. But for now, you can also do it with just your lasso tool. This is honestly, out of every whenever I'm doing this is the part of the process, a part of my art process here, digitally, that I look the least forward to. It's kind of the most boring part of the whole thing. Maybe in future videos I'll kind of skip the whole flat process altogether, because really all it is just selecting the areas you want, and dropping flat color. I don't really have any rules for flatting. Like some colorists, will try to pick the darkest color and build up. Some colorists will try to pick a mid-tone, and that's I probably fall more in line with that. It depends on what my eye kind of catches easier. For reds, it's easier for me to pick like a darker mid-tone to work with, and then build up. And then, it almost always consists of me going back and adding a little bit of shadow in there. So at the end of the day, the colors you pick for your flats, they don't make that much of a difference. You can always change them pretty easily if you don't like it. So getting his eyeballs in there, getting his teeth in there. I like picking an off-white color. That's a little too off-white. Get a little brighter than that. But teeth and eyes, I try to shy away from making them like paper white, because it comes off a little artificial when you do it that way. And getting the rest of his gloves in here, my lasso tool. It's important to try. I mean, this is actually my own advice I should follow a little bit better, but it's important to, once you have something flat, to go back in and get a little closer look, and kind of like make sure there's no white gaps showing. It just makes it a much more professional piece, and it makes it a little cleaner when you start rendering things out. Well guys, that's it for this video. I'll leave the link for part 2 in the description. That's where I will be rendering out Mr. Incredible. If you like this video, please hit the like, share, or subscribe button. See you guys in the next episode, and I'm out.